Hello there, welcome back to Vaults Remastered. Today's going to be another episode of Pathfinder Basic Training. We're going to be looking at the third action in this series of videos I'm putting together, just getting into the basic actions as presented in the player core. 14 of those, and then there are 10 additional specialty basic actions. These are the things that a player can do on their turn regardless of class and ancestry or whatever else. And I wanted to get into just what these actions are and how they work and what they mean. So without further ado, the third one is the delay action, the dreaded delay action. This is our first free action based upon the symbol up here. So for free, you don't have to spend any of your actions. You may delay. And it does just what it sounds like. You hold off your turn. The trigger is when your turn begins. So that's important. You can't do this after you've taken some actions and don't like the results. I'll delay the rest of my turn. No, you got to declare this right at the start of your turn. And then it goes on to say that you wait for the right moment to act. The rest of your turn doesn't happen yet. Instead, you're removed from the initiative order. You can return to the initiative order as a free action triggered by the end of an enemy, or that's actually not even an enemy. Any creature could be an ally. So whenever somebody else's turn ends, you can then trigger yourself to exit your delay and jump back into the initiative order. And then this is your new position. This is permanently your new position, unless you delay again, I suppose. So you trade your original initiative position for this new one. So as soon as person's done, you get to go. Now here's the other little trick to this you have to read, is that you can't use your reactions while you're delaying. So no, you can't delay and then see some juicy target run by and use your reactive strike or whatever it is that you've got. You have to exit delay in order to do anything. So you're effectively stepping back, stepping out of everything. Now your body is still physically there, so you can still take damage and be attacked, but you can't do anything until you end your delay. And the only way to end your delay, at least according to this description so far, is at the end of another creature's turn. If you delay the entire round without returning to initiative order, the actions you delayed are lost, and your initiative doesn't change, and your next turn occurs at your original position in the initiative order. So that would be the second way to exit a delay, is it goes all the way back around to your turn again, and you still haven't left. Well, now you leave the delay. Your turn effectively ends and is wasted from the previous round. And so now it's your turn again, and you could enter delay again, I suppose, at that point. Then it also mentions that when you delay, any persistent damage or other negative effects, so if you're under the effect of some condition, something like that, that normally occurs at the start or end of your turn, persistent damage kicks in at the end of your turn. But let's say you're under some influence, you're persistent bleed damage, and you're like, well, I'm going to delay on my turn. That's not going to save you. As soon as you enter the delay or you trigger your delay, any effects that are on you, like persistent damage, bang, they still hit you right then and there. Okay, and it also says that any negative effects, they occur at the start or end of your turn, occur immediately when you use your delay action. So I assume this means that it'll kick in if it's damaged, but let's say it's some debilitating thing, like you lost an action or something like that. I'm assuming that stays on you because it's kicking in right then and there. Let's say you would lose an action. I think like the slowed condition might be something I'm thinking off the top of my head. And so you'd lose whatever it is, it would kick in immediately. Because then it goes on to say that any beneficial effects that would end at any point during your turn also end immediately. GM can determine what that other effects end when you delay as well, and the long and short of it is that you can't delay to avoid negative consequences. So you can't go, I'm going to delay so I don't have that condition anymore. It'll still be with you. It'll still kick in. So you're just moving your turn order. You're not like erasing whatever persistent damage or condition that's on you. It's still on you. And any buffs or boosts that you happen to have that you're trying to, I'll try to make it, maybe it's some aura that's on you. Well, it's going to end immediately on that turn if it was supposed to end anyway. just that it ends as soon as you announce your delay. So you can't use that as some sort of cheat code in order to make it last even longer. All right, so it seems fairly straightforward, even though there's a lot of words here. But there is some, I think, adjudication here that you need to consider. At the start of your turn, you lose the previous turn's delayed actions, but you can re-enter a new delay from what I can tell. So you don't do anything that entire round. Your turn hits again, start of your turn, so anything that you didn't use is gone first, and then I would say sort of the order of operations would be then your start of turn things you get back, because at the start of your turn you get your actions, you get your reaction back. But that would happen after you've lost the previous ones, the way I'm reading the description. So I would make sure that that's clear in case some player's trying to come up with some way to finagle the system here. You cannot use this to avoid negatives or extend positives that happen or end on your turn. So they're going to happen one way or the other. So you got to remember that as the GM. Just when do they kick in? The positives end immediately if somebody delays. The negatives, if it's persistent damage or some sort of negative effect, happens immediately. And I would argue that any sort of condition that's lingering would still be on you when your turn or when you decide to jump back into the initiative. Now, what I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine this is true, is if, let's say, you don't use your delayed actions at all on your turn, that's still effectively a turn, so anything that was only on you for a round or whatever, that would end when the first bullet kicks in, which is, hey, my delay is still on me, but my turn came all the way back around. I lose all my delayed stuff. And if, let's say, there was a condition that was still on you, I would say that you would lose that. And if it's a countdown, like, condition 1 or whatever, you would tick that down to 0, whatever it is. So that would leave you, but then your turn starts again and you could delay again. I think that makes sense. If I'm making sense. I don't know. And then another couple little things is that if somebody else enters delay, so you're delaying and waiting for somebody's turn to end so that you can jump out. If somebody else delays, that's not ending their turn. Their turn hasn't started yet. They've just postponed it. So you can't use another delayed creature's turn as the end that would trigger you to leave your delay. And then the last thing I was thinking, and this isn't in the rules anywhere, but I would rule it this way. If there's an enemy that's unnoticed, you can't observe them. So how would you know that their turn ended for you to then leave your delay? So I would argue that no. If you are delaying and waiting for the end of somebody's turn, and let's say the creature's invisible or whatever, you don't notice them. You can't tell they're there. How would you know when their turn ended? For you to go, oh, I'm out of my delay now. So I would say as GM, say, you don't know what happened to that guy. You don't know if his turn's ended. Sorry. You got to wait till somebody you can see. So that would be something else I would adjudicate. And the last thing I just wanted to clarify, because I pulled this out of I think it's in the GM core. Step 3, when you end your turn, if you have persistent damage conditions, you take damage at that point. Even if it's multiple sources of persistent damage, they're all going to kick in at the end of your turn. However, the delay says that any persistent damage you're taking happens immediately. So that would be at the start of your turn. And then I would also say that this second sentence would kick in. So normally, persistent damage, you can roll a flat check. I think it's DC 15 to end the persistent, let's say, bleed damage. So I would say, because normally it kicks in at the end of your turn, but because the delay moves it to the beginning of your turn, I don't think that supersedes this way to get rid of it. So I would say that a player who is delayed, who takes the persistent damage at the start of their turn, can make the flat check right then and there to end that persistent damage. I don't think it needs to hold over till their next, when their delayed turn ends or whatever. So that's the other thing I would, rule as part of that. So there's just some clarifications, some interpretations on my part. And then the last thing I wanted to mention with this action here, this delay action, is that there are some tactics that I saw looking up on the old Reddit machine as an example. Some people were posting, reasons for using delay because, obviously I'm delaying, I'm holding off my turn. Why wouldn't I just act? Why wouldn't I use my actions? There's clearly a risk of you delaying. If you delay and the enemy just starts whomping on you, you could die before you even did anything, right? That's the trade-off. But there are some tactics that I read about, and these made sense. For instance, there's some AoE spells that are going to go off from the wizard who is acting later in the initiative turn, and the wizard really wants to throw that fireball into the enemy crowd, but he can't do it if you're in there. So you would say, hey, I'm going to delay. Let the wizard do his thing. Another thing I was reading there is that waiting for a flank to get the off guard advantage would be a smart idea, especially let's say you're a rogue, and a lot of times you probably have an early initiative, but you can't get that off guard, you can't get that sneak attack, so you delay. You let your other character friends from your team move in to get a flanking position. Then on your turn, you're able to move up, bang, get the off guard. Third one, it lets melee enemies approach you, spending their actions rather than you spending your actions approaching them. So you can delay, wait, and see what they do. Only thing about that, I can see that turning into a little standoff if the enemy also delays, because as a GM, I would have to think strategically, tactically as well. And so if it's an intelligent opponent and they see all these heroes, all these adventurers waiting for them, with their spears ready and lowered, why would they come charging at you? Maybe they're going to delay. They're going to get their spellcaster to go first. Wouldn't that be a shame? Next one, another reason you would use delay. You're waiting for allies to cast buffs and get you jacked up on some juice. Maybe the bard's got some songs they want to sing. Your cleric's got some buffs. Somebody is buffing the team. You want to wait for that before you get into the fight. That makes sense. And then the last one was kind of a tricky one that I hadn't really thought of, or at first didn't make sense. But there are some status effects, some of these debuffs, like the frightened condition, that only last until the end of the enemy's turn. So let's say you frighten somebody. I think it only lasts to the end of their turn, or the end of your turn, or something like that. So if you wait until after, so if it ends at the end of their turn, then there's not a lot of chance to take advantage of it if they're going right after you, let's say. So instead you delay, let them act first, and then hit them with the frightened or whatever debuff condition this is. Now you've got the entire round to go before that enemy gets their turn again, and this thing would end. So that would be a nice little tactic. All right, so anyway, there you go. That is the delay free action. You have a couple of triggers. You can only do it when your turn begins. You can only leave it when somebody else's turn ends. You're still going to take front-loaded persistent damage, negative debuff type of effects. Any positive buff effects that are on you, they end immediately. And of course, your enemy gets to do their thing, which in some cases might be bad. So I wouldn't just willy-nilly use a delay action unless you're definitely setting up something with your teammates. So that might require some communication as well, a little teamwork. All right, well, there you go. Hopefully that was useful information for you. So if you like these little short how-to type of views, these actions or what these actions mean, talking about them, go ahead and like the vid, subscribe, comment, all that cool stuff that YouTube asks you to do. I appreciate it, of course, and have yourselves a good night and take it easy.